On March 20th, 2022, in the picturesque town of Borno, Italy, a man was out for a jog. The serene mountain trail was something he frequented often, clean, quiet, undisturbed. But that day, something unusual caught his eye. Two large black garbage bags lying off the path. In a place like Borno, where nature is deeply respected, littering is almost unheard of. The bags looked suspiciously heavy, almost as if they were hiding something sinister. Out of curiosity and growing unease, the man walked up to them. As he opened one of the bags, what he discovered was horrifying: a severed human hand. Authorities were immediately called, and upon investigation, a total of 18 dismembered body parts were found in those bags. But this wasn't just the murder of any random person. The victim was a well-known adult film actress and OnlyFans model, Carol Maltese. What could have led to such a brutal end for someone in the public eye? Who would go so far as to torture and murder her, then scatter her remains across the mountains? To understand the motive and uncover the truth, we need to take a closer look at Carol Maltese's life, her rise to fame, and the gripping investigation that followed her gruesome murder. My name is Vivek, and I regularly share some of the most intriguing true crime stories on this channel. If you're fascinated by real-life mysteries, don't forget to subscribe before we dive into today's case. Let's begin the tragic and chilling story of Carol Maltese, a 26-year-old woman born in 1995 in Italy. Her life was far from easy. Carol's parents divorced when she was just a child, and from a young age, she faced emotional instability. Despite these challenges, she carved a name for herself in the adult entertainment industry, gaining a massive following and financial independence. But her fame also brought dark attention from jealous rivals, obsessive fans, and perhaps even people from her personal life. So, what really happened to Carol? Who could hate her enough to commit such a savage act? And how did investigators piece together the mystery from just a few scattered body parts? Stay tuned as we uncover every twist and turn in the chilling murder case of Carol Maltese. Carol was raised by her mother alone. She deeply loved her mom and truly understood how difficult it must have been for her to raise and educate a child all by herself. Despite the struggles of her childhood, Carol was a cheerful and lively girl. She loved dancing, horse riding, and traveling. She was also a huge book lover and constantly curious about learning new languages. Her vibrant and bubbly personality attracted many people, and she had a large circle of friends who adored her. In 2015, while studying at a technical university, Carol discovered she was pregnant. The pregnancy was completely unexpected. She was only 20 at the time. It turned her life upside down and had a serious impact on her education. But Carol and her boyfriend showed courage. They decided not only to go through with the pregnancy, but also to raise the child together. That kind of bravery is truly commendable. I know that later in this video, Carol may receive a lot of hate in the comments, but for this decision alone, she has my respect. Things were going well for a while. Carol and her boyfriend moved to a new city. Both got jobs, and Carol started working as a sales consultant at a shoe store. Life seemed to be settling down for them. But in 2019, things took a turn. Carol fell in love with another man, and the two began an affair that they kept secret for months. I'm pretty sure her boyfriend must have sensed something was wrong. Maybe he noticed changes in her behavior or felt that something was off. Still, for months, he remained unaware that Carol was cheating on him. When he eventually found out, their relationship ended. Carol then decided to start a new life with her new boyfriend. She also made the decision that their child would stay with his biological father, her ex-boyfriend. It wasn't like Carol abandoned her son completely. She stayed in touch, visited regularly, and even sent him gifts. But in 2020, something happened that changed everything. The global pandemic hit. The world shut down, people went into lockdown, travel was restricted, businesses closed, and countless people lost their jobs and livelihoods. During this time, Carol was unable to meet her son, or even her sick mother. Carol was struggling, really struggling. She couldn't send money to her son, and even her own survival had become a daily challenge. Among the many hit hard by the lockdown, Carol was one of them. Desperate for a way out, she came up with an idea. She'd start a YouTube channel. Her plan was to share her life, her challenges during lockdown, and hopefully monetize her content. But soon, Carol realized something. YouTube wasn't working. It wasn't the platform people turned to for the kind of raw, intimate content she had to offer. That's when she discovered OnlyFans, a platform where creators could upload exclusive content and get paid directly by their subscribers. While content on OnlyFans could range widely, Carol learned that most of it leaned heavily toward nudity and adult themes. Still, she decided to give it a shot. She created an account under the alias Charlotte Angie and began posting explicit photos and videos. To her surprise, success came fast. People were drawn to her. Subscriptions rolled in and her fan base grew rapidly. As her popularity soared, so did her opportunities. Exclusive parties, adult photo shoots, public appearances, and interviews. Her career took off like a rocket, but success came with a price Carol was willing to pay. Most of her friends distanced themselves. They didn't support her choice. Even her boyfriend left her, the very man for whom she had once ended a previous relationship and distanced herself from her own child. Despite losing so much, Carol stayed in the industry. To her, the people judging her were simply narrow-minded. Her work was art, something not everyone could understand. Carol often said in interviews that she didn't plan to stay in the adult industry forever. She wanted to save up and eventually chase her real dreams. And that's exactly what she did. By the age of 25, she moved to a small town with a population of just 15,000. She left the adult industry behind and started working at a local perfume shop. Life became peaceful. But that peace didn't last. She quickly realized it wasn't so easy to leave that world behind. Eventually, she returned to her old life by choice. And that's when she met David Fontana. David was 42, worked at a bank, and had a deep passion for photography, particularly explicit nude photography. Despite having a family, David often scoured the internet looking for attractive women to model for his private shoots. In October 2020, David met Carol and was immediately captivated by her beauty. Their professional shoots soon turned into a sexual arrangement. David would pay Carol to sleep with him, and she agreed. Over time, that arrangement turned into something more, something real. They fell in love. David had truly fallen for Carol, so much so that by March 2021, just 6 months into their relationship, he confessed everything to his wife, his affair, his feelings, and filed for divorce. He was ready to destroy his long-established life to be with Carol, a woman nearly half his age. They weren't just lovers anymore. David became part of Carol's work too. He helped her with content creation and took a percentage of her income in return. He didn't mind that she was still involved in explicit content or sleeping with other men, as long as it was all professional. But that didn't mean he didn't care. In fact, he was extremely possessive. Maybe that possessiveness is what made him want to work with her, so he could keep an eye on her. When Carol's ex-boyfriend once tried to reconnect with her, David became violently jealous. He threatened the man over the phone and even vandalized his car. Twice. By now, Carol's OnlyFans had exploded, over 30,000 subscribers and growing. She had moved beyond regular content and started doing custom requests. Clients would describe what they wanted, and Carol would create exactly that for a premium price. She was making real money, enough to finally leave the adult industry and focus on her long-term dreams. But life had other plans. During this time, Carol fell in love again, this time with a colleague named Salvatore Dalve, a fellow actor in the adult film industry. Their connection grew fast, and eventually, Salvatore proposed. Carol said yes. She was ready to leave everything behind. David, the industry, the lifestyle. She wanted to move back to her old city with Salvatore, where her ex and son still lived, and be a mother again. But to do that, she needed to cut ties with David completely. The problem? David was deeply embedded in her work, both emotionally and financially, and Carol had grown tired of the arrangement. She wanted out. Then, in early 2022, something shocking happened. Carol vanished. No warning. No goodbye. No social media updates. She would occasionally reply to family, making vague excuses about being busy, but nothing else. Her disappearance worried everyone, friends, family, even Salvatore. When they asked David about her, he claimed he hadn't spoken to her since they broke up. But something about it felt off. A few days later, a man walking near the outskirts of town noticed 4 large, heavy bags near a dumpster. Curious and suspicious, he looked inside one and found a severed hand. Horrified, he called the police immediately. Authorities recovered 4 bags in total. Inside were 18 dismembered body parts, hacked with such brutality that even determining the gender of the victim was difficult without forensic tests. The lab later confirmed it was a young woman, about 5 feet tall, with black hair and 11 tattoos, most of which had been deliberately defaced or even skinned off to prevent identification. The woman had been dead for about a month and stored in a freezer before the killer decided to dispose of the body. The case shocked the public. That's when Andrea Telly, a journalist and editor for a local magazine, took a personal interest in the mystery. He began digging. And one question haunted him. If the woman had been dead for a month, why had no one reported her missing? Then, on March 26, 2022, the breakthrough came. A random man called the police after recognizing a tattoo from the victim's photos released to the public. He claimed the body belonged to Charlotte Angie, the popular adult film star. You might remember, Charlotte Angie was the alias Carol used for her OnlyFans. The world knew her by that name. Suddenly, everything started falling into place. Andrea continued digging. He contacted the adult agency Carol worked for and got in touch with a fellow actress who claimed to be her friend. She gave Andrea Carol's real phone number. When Andrea called, there was no answer. So he sent a text posing as a journalist requesting an interview. To his surprise, he received replies. But something felt off. There were no calls, no voice notes, just texts. The replies were evasive and vague. Andrea realized this wasn't Carol. This was her killer, pretending to be her. Andrea changed his strategy. He sent a message saying, "A body was just found with tattoos identical to Carol Maltes. I just want to confirm she's okay." That threw the killer off. They panicked. After a few more brief messages, the replies stopped entirely. Andrea was now certain he had just spoken to Carol's murderer. On March 27, Andrea handed over all the information to the police. That same day, 2 men walked into the station to report Carol missing. According to David, on January 11th, he and Carol were shooting a custom video requested by a fan. This fan had a very specific and extreme request. Carol was to have a paper bag placed over her head, her mouth taped shut, and she was to be physically tortured, including being hit on the head with a hammer, though supposedly not too hard. Since it was part of the She'll Die That Way series, they began filming. During the shoot, David hit Carol multiple times on the head with a hammer, beat her, and tortured her. But when he removed the bag from her head at the end of the shoot, he saw Carol gasping for air. She was on the verge of dying. David claims he couldn't bear to see her suffer like that, so he took a kitchen knife and ended her life, a so-called mercy killing. After her death, David refrigerated her body for 3 months, slowly dismembered it, and eventually disposed of the remains. But detectives weren't buying his story. David's repeated changes in his testimony, combined with inconsistencies in the evidence, led the investigators to a darker and more disturbing version of the events. As it turns out, Carol had plans to leave the adult industry for good. She wanted to move back to her hometown, be with her son, and marry her boyfriend, Selvit. January 11th, 2022 was supposed to be her final shoot before starting a new chapter in life. During the investigation, detectives discovered that the so-called fan who requested the torture-themed video was none other than David himself. He had created a twisted scenario centered on domination and control. One disturbing scene even included Carol giving David her phone's passcode, a symbolic act of ultimate submission. Unaware that the request had come from David and not an actual fan, Carol went along with the shoot. That mistake cost her everything. During filming, David began to hit her for real, slamming the hammer into her skull repeatedly until she died. But the horror didn't end there. David didn't immediately dismember her body. For days, he kept visiting the studio, staring at her lifeless corpse. Eventually, he purchased tools like a CS-100 cutter from a hardware store and proceeded to dismember and freeze her remains. With access to Carol's phone passcode, David continued replying to messages, maintaining the illusion that Carol was still alive. He even used her credit card occasionally to keep up appearances. On November 24th, 2022, the court hearings began. David's lawyers argued that the entire thing was a tragic accident, that they were simply acting out a fan's request, and the situation spiraled out of control. But the prosecution presented undeniable evidence that David had sent that fan request himself. It was all premeditated: the murder, the manipulation, and the control. They argued that the motive was either jealousy or greed. Carol was leaving him, leaving the industry, and starting a new life, something David couldn't handle. He stood to lose both a personal and professional partner. On June 12, 2023, David was sentenced to 30 years in prison. He was also ordered to pay compensation to Carol's parents, her son, and the father of her child. But the real MVP of this case? Journalist Andrea Totley. If she hadn't taken a deep interest in the case and conducted her own investigation, Carol's death might have remained a mystery, and the man responsible may have never been brought to justice. If you found this story intriguing, please like and share this video, and don't forget to drop your thoughts in the comments below.